gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is Teddy, and today we're talking about another gaming notebook. This time it's the MSI GE72 2QD, well, what a mouthful, Apache. So we recently did the G60, so I thought this one would be good to do somewhat back to back to that. So let's jump straight into it then with the design. And as you can see, you have the MSI Gaming Series logo there and chrome up top. It has this nice brushed aluminium finish, which I really like. I mean, this is something that it's not really that unique. You do see it around now quite a bit, but it still gives it a really nice premium look to it, and I really do like it. Dimensions wise, you can see that it's fairly thin for a gaming notebook, but it is still quite wide. We'll open up here for you guys. Go. Alright. And you can see that the brushed aluminium transfers to the front as well. It's just this nice one piece here with the keyboard cut out. Yeah, I think it looks really good. It has a very, it's still quite subtle because it's all black. I mean, it has these red accents which kind of spice it up a little bit, but for the most part it's just all black. But the brushed aluminium does give it that more premium look. So design wise I think it looks really good, and dimensions wise I think it's really good as well. Now if we look around to I/O, you'll notice that there's absolutely nothing in the front. But if you look around to the left hand side, up front we have a gold plated headphone jack and microphone jack, twin USB 3.0 ports, that's always good to see, a mini display port, HDMI, another USB charging port, gigabit Ethernet, and a secure lock. And if we swing around, there's nothing on the back. To the right hand side you'll see that there's just a multi-card reader, there's the AC input, multi-card reader, and a USB 2.0 port, and the DVD drive up the front there. Which, I mean, yeah, I've said a lot of people have different opinions about the inclusion of disk drives in this day and age. And personally, I don't think it's that much of a deal, but, you know, it's fine nevertheless. Anyways, let's jump into the specs then. So it features an Intel i7-4720HQ CPU. That's a Haswell-based quad-core CPU. Turbos up to 3.6 GHz, so it's pretty good. It's getting up there. That's on the HM87 chipset. And just so you guys know how fast it goes, this is equipped with an SSD, M.2 SSD, 128 GB plus a 1 TB 7200 RPM HDD for your mass storage. So if you want to see how fast it starts up, here we go, pushing the button now, and you can see. So that LCD panel you see there is 17.3 inch full HD, so that's just 1080p, LED backlit, anti-glare. Now the graphics are handled by NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960M, so that's a Maxwell based GPU with 2 GB of GDDR5 memory, and we'll be talking about the performance later on in this video. For the system memory, just getting a single stick of 8 GB, although you can fit another stick in there if you want to go up to 16 GB at a maximum speed of 1600 MHz. And warranty wise, you see it's all booted, ready to go, you do whatever you want. Very quick with these M2 SSDs. And warranty wise it's 2 years with MSI, like normal. So you see that nice panel there, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. So as I said, 17.3 inch, 1080p, 60 Hz. It did a fairly decent job for the most part. MSI went on about the viewing angles with this, but I don't know, it seems pretty standard to me. The color reproduction was pretty good. Honestly, these panels, there's not that much to say about them. Not to say that they're bad, it's just that they're very standard. So that's good. Just a standard, solid 1080p panel with decent color reproduction, decent viewing angles, just decent all round. So that's all there really is to say about it. Now the sound is handled by Dyne Audio, which is somewhat common these days on the MSI laptops, the higher end ones anyways. Features 4 speakers, including 2 front-facing ones, which I really liked. These things go super loud, like really loud. At 50% volume, it's going to be more than enough for your gaming and, you know, music or movie needs. That should be plenty. at 100% volume, it's like, you know, you could have a party around this and have people talking and everything, and you'd still be able to hear the music just fine. So it goes seriously loud. But even at that 100% volume, you don't get any of the vibrations or anything like that distorts the music at all. It just sounds really good, or the audio in general. It just sounds really, really good. And there's also a fairly good amount of bass with a subwoofer on the bottom. So that's good. It gives it that more full sound that I really like to see. And just Dynaudio is just a really good job for the most part. And there's no exceptions here. It's just really solid in the audio department. Now, moving on to the keyboard, as you see, looking all nice and fancy there. So, the keyboard is by SteelSeries, which again is a somewhat standard thing on the higher end-ish MSI laptops. It's really good. Like usual, the layout is really solid. I don't really have any complaints. They put all the brightness and volume keys down, functions I should say, down on the arrow keys, and everything else is pretty much where it should be, so no issues at all with the layout. The key switches themselves feel really good. There's quite a bit of travel for a laptop. Obviously, as I said before, this is not going to hold a candle to anything. Hold the light, I suppose, would be the better way to say it, to a desktop mechanical keyboard, but as far as laptops go, as long as it's not the GD80, I suppose, if you're comparing it to that, it's just really, really good, and you're going to be able to game and type on it with no worries at all. Now, the customizable backlight, which we will talk about further a bit later when we get to software, is really nice as well. You can see the lighting of the LEDs looks really solid, and it just adds it adds that bit more customizability, which a lot of people like, but also it just looks really good and makes it stand out a bit. It also has two extra buttons up here by the power button. One is just a full fan button, so you press that, the fans will just ramp up to full, which will help with keep it cool if you're gaming. And the other one is just a SteelSeries button, and if we press that, it'll turn off one side of the keyboard and then the other, and then go completely off, so if you don't want any LEDs off for whatever reason, maybe if it's at night time and it's a bit too bright for you, or if you just want to save battery life, I suppose you could turn them off too. So there's that as well. But yeah, keyboard, really good. Now the touchpad. So if you watched my GE70 review, you would have noticed that I said the touchpad was fantastic, and you'd probably assume that the touchpad would also be fantastic on the GE72. Not so much the case. They've kind of changed the texture on the touchpad itself. It feels accurate, but it feels a little bit harder to use. Like, it just feels a bit more sticky. Your finger doesn't glide as much. It just didn't feel as good, so I didn't think that was very good. It's easy to click things. That part of it's just fine, but getting gestures to work on this was quite difficult, and I just didn't. I didn't like it that much. But it's not like it's really bad. I'd say it's just not as good as the one on the G60, which is quite strange. But it still does a pretty decent job for the most part. Webcam up the top, as well as microphone, is a standard 720p, 30 frames per second. You buy for all you'd need to do for a conference calls or gaming or whatever you might need it for. And that brings us now to the performance, where people really want to see what that 4720HQ and 960M can do. So we'll start off with Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, the benchmark within that software, to see what the CPU can do. And it did 454 marks, which is fairly decent for a laptop. Now on to some benchmarks. So Unigine Valley on the Extreme HD preset. And the G72 scored 20.9 frames per second average. So again, that's a pretty solid score. Remember, this is always with the battery plugged in, the charger plugged in, I should say. A lot of people watch my videos on my laptop reviews and stuff, and they buy the laptop, or they might have access to it themselves, and they go to do the same benchmarks as me, and they don't plug it in, and they wonder why the FPS is significantly lower. That's why. Make sure it's plugged in. When you're gaming on your gaming laptop, make sure it's plugged in, because you're going to get much better performance that way. Now, moving on. Heaven 4.0. This is DirectX 11, everything maxed out, obviously 1080p. The G72 scored 19.7 frames per second average, which again is decent for the most part. These benchmarks are a bit much for most laptops out there, keep that in mind. Here and again, this time OpenGL wants to get everything maxed out. And this time it did 18.1 frames a second, so also did fairly good. Now, Tomb Raider. So I ran this on 3 different graphics settings to give you guys an idea of where it will sit. So on the ultimate preset, it scored 31.4 frames per second. So that's everything maxed out without VSync. So just got you over 30. Now I ran it on high as well, and it scored 68.9 frames per second average, which is also fairly good. And on normal, it scored 102.3 frames per second, which is also very good. And I'll put the comparison to the G60 down below as well. So yeah, it's definitely a good improvement. On the ultimate preset, it'll probably dip below 30, so I probably wouldn't recommend that for the most part. But just chuck it on high, and it's probably going to stay over 60 frames per second in the majority of the gameplay, and that'll give you a really nice gameplay experience. Moving on now to heat and noise, and with all that performance, you'd probably expect quite a bit of heat, and on the CPU side of things, you would be correct. So, during the Intel Extreme Tuning Utility benchmark, the 4720HQ went all the way up to a nice toasty 89 degrees Celsius. So, getting fairly up there, although there was no throttling, so you don't need to worry about that. And it is getting quite hot here in New Zealand at the moment, so that wouldn't be helping anything. And as far as the GPU went, during the Unigine Valley benchmark, it went up to 71 degrees Celsius, that 960M getting a little bit toasty. And in the Heaven benchmark, it went to 70 degrees Celsius. So that's not too bad. GPU-wise, that's just fine. 70 degrees Celsius, that's fine. The CPU side of things, that is getting a little bit more on the toasty side, but we didn't see any throttling, so that's fine as well. Now, as far as noise goes, at idle, as you can hear, I'm holding it right now. My ear is right next to it, and I can barely hear anything. So, I mean, it's much quieter than my rig just behind it. I can hear my rig over this. So, at idle, or when you're doing sort of casual use type things, just watching videos, typing documents, it's going to be completely silent. When you start gaming, it will start to ramp up a bit, but it's not that bad at all. Honestly, it's drowned out very easily by the volume of your game and that, and so if you're wearing headphones you won't hear it at all. So yeah, noise wise it was very, very good in that department also. Now that brings us to battery life, the Achilles heel of most gaming notebooks, and it is again with this one as well. It's pretty disappointing, even with sort of conservative use. I'd say if you turn the brightness down to like 50% and you're only doing basic things on it, I mean, you're going to be lucky if you get 4 hours out of it. So then that's with conservative use. With power use, well, with a power user, it'll probably, you know, brightness turned up and doing a lot of things, you could probably see about 2.5 to 3 hours out of it. And then with gaming use, you're going to play games out of it, oh, you'll be lucky if it gets 2 hours. So battery life is a bit disappointing if you're comparing it to the broad spectrum of all notebooks, but as far as gaming notebooks go, it's nothing out of the ordinary and nothing, you know, that we're not used to by now. Now, software wise, so there's heaps of software like normal with these MSI laptops. The MSI LED Manager allows you to customize the keyboard LEDs, so you can just set the colors you like and lots of other great stuff. The Dragon Gaming Center is still a good utility program to have, especially pre-installed. XSplit Gamecaster is going to be good for people that want to be streaming from this laptop, and that's nice that that's included. And System Control Manager, I don't know, some people might find that useful, I guess. So yeah, software-wise, it comes with a decent amount of stuff with it, which, you know, some people might like. So that brings us now to the conclusion of the GE72 2QD. Now, this thing is coming with quite the price tag as well of 2,450 New Zealand dollars. What do I think about that price? Honestly, I think it's slightly too high for what it is. You know, with that sort of price, I would expect a little bit more. Although I'm only saying that is slightly too high, so still not too bad. If it dropped a couple $100 less, then I wouldn't be complaining. The design looks really premium, and this just overall dimensions wise has a really good look to it. I think it looks premium, looks nice. It feels very well built and sturdy, and it's not going to be too big or too heavy, coming in at around 3 kilograms, by the way. The screen is good, but standard, nothing to see for. Just a standard, nice 1080p panel that is going to get you by for everything you need. The sound is fantastic, goes super duper loud and sounds really full, so I was very impressed by that. The keyboard has a good layout like normal, and has good key travel, lighting looks really good, so again, yeah, it's really good. The touchpad is decent for the most part, although I did have a few issues with it, especially with gestures, which are a bit annoying, and sometimes just using it was a little bit cumbersome. Performance, as far as gaming notebooks go, is pretty sort of, I don't know how you define it, maybe lower high level, lower high end would be the other way to put it with the 960M. But yeah, it should be good enough for the majority of users out there, especially if you're just using this as kind of like a backup laptop for when you're away from your big rig to get you by if your gaming needs. It's going to do really good. And even as a primary use, like if you're going to use it as a desktop placement, or you just don't have a desktop and you just need a laptop for whatever reason, it's going to do just fine with your gaming, although you're probably not going to play games, modern games maxed out, but you'll be able to get by on a medium-sized setting, I guarantee that, and you'll definitely get by in older games on the high settings or maxed out settings. And battery life is pretty disappointing, but I've just learned not to expect too much when it comes to gaming laptops. So overall, over the G60, yeah, it's better. But with that extra price tag, it's quite hard to recommend to people over it. I mean, people are just going to have to judge for themselves if the price is, the extra performance and just the extra premium stuff is worth that bigger price tag out there. But I definitely recommend this one over the G60 for people that want to pay a bit more but just have a much superior laptop. Then it definitely is over the G60. So that would be my recommendation with this one. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoy my laptop reviews. I try to do them as best as I can and give you guys the best consumer advice I possibly can. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.